5 years after the liberation of Kepler 442b, the planet had transformed into something that neither the humans nor the Valthera could have imagined. The mountain caves where Jake had first hidden had grown into a vast network of underground cities connected by tunnels that stretched across entire continents. Lisa stood in the main council chamber of New Liberty, the capital city that had been built in the Keth Mountains. Through the crystal windows, she could see human settlements spread across the valleys below, and spacecraft launching toward the stars carrying messages of hope to other enslaved worlds. "The latest reports from the Centauri colonies are encouraging," said Marcus, who had become the head of interstellar communications. "3 more systems have successfully driven out their Valthara occupiers using our enhancement techniques." Jake entered the chamber carrying the latest intelligence reports from their deep space reconnaissance missions. His hair was now streaked with gray, but the Nexium enhancement had kept him as strong and vital as ever. "The Valthara Empire is in complete chaos," he reported to the assembled council. "Their military forces are stretched thin trying to maintain control over dozens of rebellious worlds." Lisa smiled as she read the reports. The revolution that had started with her begging for bread to save her brother had spread across the galaxy. Humans everywhere were discovering that they did not have to accept oppression. Danny entered the chamber wearing the uniform of the Deep Space Reconnaissance Corps. Now 17 years old, he had become one of the most skilled pilots in the human fleet and had personally delivered enhancement technology to 6 different star systems. "The convoy to Ross 128 is ready to depart," he reported. "We have enough Nexium concentrate to enhance approximately 10,000 humans and enough weapons to equip a full resistance army." Lisa felt the same mix of pride and worry that she always experienced when Danny prepared for another dangerous mission. Her little brother had grown into a skilled warrior and leader, but she still remembered the sick child she had risked everything to save. "How long until you return?" she asked. 3 months, if everything goes according to plan," Danny replied. "But you know how these missions can develop complications." Jake studied the star charts showing the locations of known human colonies and Valthara military installations. "The Empire is starting to adapt to our tactics," he said. "They are concentrating their forces around key systems and abandoning the outer colonies." This was the strategic challenge that human military planners had been expecting. The Valthara were learning that they could not maintain control over scattered populations of enhanced humans, so they were consolidating their power around their most important worlds. "That might actually work in our favor," Lisa observed. "If they abandon the outer colonies, we can liberate entire sectors without fighting major battles." Marcus activated a holographic display showing the current political situation in their sector of the galaxy. 47 human colonies have declared independence in the past year, he said. "The Valthara only have direct control over 12 systems now, but those 12 systems included some of the most heavily populated human worlds in known space. Earth itself remained under alien occupation, along with the original colony worlds that had millions of human inhabitants. Earth is still the ultimate objective," Jake said. "Until the homeworld is free, the Valthara can claim that they still rule humanity." Lisa had been studying the intelligence reports about Earth for months. The planet was heavily fortified and protected by the largest Valthara fleet in the galaxy. Any assault on Earth would require coordinating the forces of dozens of liberated worlds. "We are not ready for that kind of operation yet," she said. "We need more ships, more enhanced fighters, and better weapons." "The Weapons Research Division has some promising developments," Marcus reported. "The new Nexium-powered energy weapons are showing effectiveness rates 50% higher than our current equipment." The human colonies had made remarkable advances in technology since gaining access to Nexium enhancement. The mineral that had originally been used to make individuals stronger was now being incorporated into spacecraft weapons and defensive systems. Danny was eager to test the new weapons in combat. "Let me take a squadron to the Vega system," he suggested. "The Valthara garrison there is small, and we could use it as a testing ground for the new technology." Jake shook his head. "The days of small raids are ending," he said. "From now on, we need to think in terms of major campaigns that can achieve strategic objectives." Lisa agreed with Jake's assessment. The guerrilla tactics that had worked so well in the early days of the rebellion were no longer sufficient for the challenges they faced. They needed to become a real military force capable of large-scale operations. "I propose we begin planning for the liberation of the Tau Ceti system," she said. "It has a large human population and its location would give us a strategic base for future operations." The Tau Ceti system was one of the oldest human colonies and had been under Valthara control for over 20 years. Liberating it would require the largest military operation in human history, but it would also demonstrate that no alien stronghold was beyond their reach. "The planning committee will need at least 6 months to develop a comprehensive strategy," Marcus said, "and we will need commitments from at least a dozen other liberated worlds to provide ships and personnel." Jake was already thinking about the tactical challenges of such an operation. "We will need to neutralize their orbital defenses first," he said, "and we will have to do it quickly before they can call for reinforcements from other systems." Lisa looked around the council chamber at the faces of the men and women who had helped transform a desperate rescue mission into a galactic revolution. Many of them had been there from the beginning when they were just refugees hiding in mountain caves. "Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I had not begged for that bread," she said. "Would any of this have occurred without that first act of desperation?" "History always finds a way," Jake replied. "If it had not been you, it would have been someone else." He paused and looked out at the human settlements visible through the crystal windows. "But I am glad it was you." Danny was studying the star charts and making calculations for his next mission. "The important thing is what happens next," he said. "We have proven that humans can fight back, but now we have to prove that we can govern ourselves and build something better than what the Valthara had." Lisa nodded because her brother had identified the real challenge facing liberated humanity. Winning freedom was only the first step. Creating a just and sustainable civilization would be much more difficult. "The new colonial charter is almost complete," Marcus reported. "It establishes principles for how liberated worlds will cooperate and share resources." The charter was based on the hard lessons learned during the years of resistance. It emphasized individual freedom, collective responsibility, and the absolute prohibition of slavery in any form. "Every human child should grow up knowing that they will never be slaves," Lisa said. "That is what we are really fighting for." Jake picked up the latest intelligence report about Earth and studied it carefully. "The Valthara are increasing their military presence around the homeworld," he said. "They know we are coming." "Let them prepare," Danny said with the confidence of youth. "By the time we reach Earth, we will have liberated so many worlds that they will be facing the entire human race." Lisa felt a moment of doubt as she contemplated the enormous challenges that lay ahead. "Are we ready for that kind of responsibility?" she asked. "Governing a galactic civilization is very different from leading a rebellion." "We will learn as we go," Jake replied, "just like we learned how to fight." He stood up and walked to the window overlooking the human settlements. "The alternative is to let someone else make decisions for us, and we have already tried that." As the meeting ended and the council members departed to their various duties, Lisa remained in the chamber with her thoughts. Through the crystal window, she could see children playing in the settlements below. They were growing up free and strong, and they had no memory of Valthara oppression. Danny joined her at the window. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "I am thinking about how far we have come," Lisa replied, "and how far we still have to go." In the distance, a convoy of spacecraft lifted off from the spaceport carrying enhancement technology and weapons to another enslaved world. The revolution that had started in a mountain cave was spreading across the galaxy one star system at a time. "The Valthara made a mistake when they underestimated us," Danny observed. "They thought we were just animals that could be controlled." With fear and hunger, Lisa nodded. "But we showed them what humans really are," she said. "We are survivors and fighters, and we will never stop until every human in the galaxy is free." The final battle for Kepler 442b came sooner than anyone expected. The Valthara had decided that if they could not keep the planet, then they would destroy it rather than let the humans have it. Their remaining forces gathered at the planetary capital for one last, desperate assault. Jake and Lisa returned from the orbital platform to find the Resistance preparing for the largest military operation in their history. Every human settlement was sending fighters to join the final push to drive the aliens from their world. Intelligence. Reports indicate they are planning to use scorched earth tactics. Marcus briefed the assembled commanders. They want to destroy our infrastructure and poison our water supplies before they retreat. Lisa studied the tactical displays showing Valthara, physicians around the capital city. The aliens had concentrated their remaining forces in a defensive perimeter that would be difficult to break through with conventional attacks. We need to hit them from multiple directions simultaneously, she said. If we give them time to execute their destruction plan, we might save the planet but lose everything we need to survive on it. Jake nodded in agreement. This has to be fast and decisive, he said. No prolonged siege and no time for them to carry out their sabotage plans. The human forces had grown far beyond what anyone had imagined possible at the start of the war. There were now over 50,000 enhanced fighters spread across the planet, and they were supported by millions of regular humans who provided supplies and intelligence. Danny had been promoted to lead one of the scout units despite his young age. The children who had been enhanced early in the war had developed abilities that were useful for reconnaissance and infiltration missions. I want to fight in the main assault, Danny told his sister as they prepared for the final battle. Your job is to gather intelligence and stay safe, Lisa replied firmly. I did not save you from starvation just to watch you get killed in a battle. The other kids my age are fighting, Danny argued. Why should I be different? Lisa knelt down to look her brother in the eyes. Because you are all I have left of our family, she said quietly. And because someone needs to survive this war to tell future generations what we fought for. Jake was organizing the main assault force when urgent reports came in from the perimeter scouts. The Valthara were beginning their destruction protocol ahead of schedule. Explosions could be seen from the direction of the capital city. They are destroying the water treatment facilities, Marcus reported. If they finish their sabotage plan, the planet will be uninhabitable for decades. Jake made the decision to advance the timeline for their attack. All units move to final positions immediately, he ordered. We launch the assault in 2 hours instead of waiting for dawn. The human forces moved through the darkness toward their objectives. Years of guerrilla warfare had taught them how to coordinate complex operations without relying on electronic communications that the Valthara could intercept. Lisa led her tactical unit toward the eastern approach to the capital, while Jake took the main force through the southern corridor. Other units approached from the north and west to complete the encirclement. The first phase of the attack was to neutralize the Valthara early warning systems and communication networks. Enhanced humans with specialized equipment moved silently through the alien defensive positions, disabling sensors and jamming equipment. Danny's scout unit was responsible for mapping the locations of the destruction charges that the Valthara had placed throughout the city. The information they gathered would be crucial for disarming the devices before they could be detonated. 27 explosive devices identified in the government district, Danny reported over the radio, all connected to a central detonation system in the old colonial administration building. Lisa felt proud of her brother's professionalism, even though she was terrified for his safety. The intelligence he was providing would save thousands of lives if they could act on it quickly enough. The main assault began at midnight when Jake's force struck the southern defensive line. The enhanced humans moved through the Valthara positions, like a force of nature, destroying weapons and capturing key points with devastating efficiency. Lisa's unit hit the eastern positions at the same time, creating confusion among the alien defenders about where the main attack was coming from. The Valthara had prepared for a conventional human assault, but they were facing opponents who were stronger and faster than anything they had encountered before. Enemy communications are down, Marcus reported from the northern sector. They cannot coordinate their defense or trigger their destruction protocol remotely, but the aliens still had manual controls for their sabotage devices, and they were beginning to activate them individually. Explosions lit up the night sky as critical infrastructure was destroyed piece by piece. Jake fought his way through the city streets toward the central command complex where the Vaelthara leadership was directing the destruction. His enhanced strength allowed him to tear through their defensive barriers, and his tactical intelligence helped him navigate the complex urban battlefield. Lisa's unit was tasked with securing the water treatment facilities before they could be completely destroyed. They arrived to find Vaelthara engineers already setting charges on the main filtration systems. The battle for the treatment plant was fierce and personal. Lisa thought about all the human children who would die from poisoned water if she failed to stop the sabotage. Her anger gave her strength beyond even the Nexium enhancement. "Facilities secured," she reported after the last alien engineer was defeated, beginning damage assessment and emergency repairs. Danny's scouts were meanwhile infiltrating the government district to disarm the explosive devices they had identified. The young humans were small enough to reach places that adult fighters could not access, and their enhanced reflexes allowed them to disable the alien technology safely. 15 devices disarmed, Danny reported, but I count 12 more that were not in our original survey. The hidden explosives were the Vaelthara's final surprise. They had placed additional charges in locations designed to cause maximum psychological damage rather than strategic value. Schools and hospitals were targeted to break human morale even in victory. Jake reached the central command complex and found the remaining Vaelthara leadership preparing to detonate everything at once rather than allow the humans to capture them alive. The alien commanders preferred to die as warriors rather than surrender to beings they still considered inferior. The final confrontation was between Jake and General Vorthak, the supreme Vaelthara commander on Kepler 442b. The general was the one who had originally ordered the enslavement of the human population and had personally supervised many of the worst atrocities. "Your species should have accepted its place in the natural order," Vorthak said as he prepared for combat. "Now you will all die for your arrogance. The natural order is that no one deserves to be enslaved." Jake replied, "And today we prove that humans will never accept chains." The battle between Jake and Vorthak was witnessed by fighters from both sides as it raged through the command center. The alien general was skilled and experienced, but Jake's enhanced abilities and years of guerrilla warfare gave him advantages that technology alone could not overcome. When Jake finally defeated Vorthak, the remaining Vaelthara forces began surrendering throughout the city. Without their leadership and with their destruction plan mostly thwarted, they had no reason to continue fighting. Lisa and Danny met up with Jake at the captured command center as dawn was breaking over the capital city. The war was finally over, and humans were free on their own planet for the first time in years. "What happens now?" Danny asked as they watched the last Vaelthara shuttles leaving for their ships in orbit. "Now we rebuild," Lisa said, "and we make sure this never happens again." Jake was already studying reports from across the planet. "The other colonies are reporting successful uprisings," he said. "Kepler 442b is completely liberated." But even as they celebrated their victory, they knew that the Vaelthara Empire was vast and that other human worlds were still under alien control. The war for Kepler 442b was over, but the larger fight for human freedom was just beginning. 3 months after the first uprising, the war for Kepler 442b had reached a turning point. The Vaelthara still controlled several major cities and the orbital defense platforms, but their grip on the planet was weakening every day. Human resistance groups were operating in every region, and the enhanced fighters were proving to be more effective than anyone had imagined. Lisa had become one of the primary coordinators for the rebellion. Her natural talent for strategy and her ability to inspire other humans had made her invaluable to the resistance leadership. She spent her days planning operations and her nights training new recruits in the mountain camps. Danny had made a complete recovery and was now one of the youngest members of the resistance. The Nexium enhancement had not only healed his sickness, but had given him abilities that amazed even Jake. The boy could climb vertical rock faces and move through the forest without making a sound. "The enhancement works differently on younger humans," Jake explained as they watched Danny teaching other children how to navigate the mountain paths. "Their bodies adapt to it more completely." Lisa felt proud watching her brother, but also worried about what the war was doing to all the children involved. "Sometimes I wonder if we are asking too much of them," she said. The Valthara never gave them a choice about growing up fast. Jake replied, "At least now they are growing up free." The Resistance had evolved far beyond the simple rescue missions that had started the war. They now had organized military units equipped with enhanced weapons and coordinated battle plans. The mountain caves had been expanded into a complex network of tunnels and chambers that could house thousands of people. Jake had become the unofficial leader of the entire resistance movement. His reputation had spread to every human settlement on the planet, and Valthara forces had placed an enormous bounty on his capture. But he seemed to be everywhere at once, striking at alien positions and then disappearing back into the mountains. The Valthara High Command is requesting additional military resources, Lisa reported after intercepting another alien communication. They are admitting to their homeworld that they underestimated human capabilities. Jake studied the intelligence, reports that were spread across the table in their command center. "Good," he said. "Fear will make them more likely to make mistakes." The latest Valthara mistake had been attempting to use human hostages to force the resistance to surrender. They had gathered several hundred civilians in the main square of Capital City and threatened to execute them unless Jake turned himself in. Instead of surrendering, Jake had led a massive rescue operation that freed all the hostages and captured most of the Valthara forces in the city. The aliens were learning that threatening human civilians only made the resistance more determined to fight. "We are receiving reports from the outer colonies," said Marcus Webb, one of Jake's top lieutenants. "The mining stations on the northern continent have been completely liberated." Lisa marked the new free territories on their strategic map. More than half the planet was now under human control, and the Valthara were running out of places to retreat to. "What about the orbital platforms?" she asked. "Still heavily defended," Marcus replied. "But our people are working on a solution to that problem." The orbital defense platforms were the key to Valthara control of the planet. As long as the aliens controlled space around Kepler 442b, they could bring in reinforcements and resupply their ground forces. But the platforms were too well defended for conventional attacks. Jake had been working on a plan to capture one of the platforms, but it would require a level of coordination and risk that had never been attempted before. They would need to use the enhanced human's ability to survive in space for short periods without protective equipment. The Nexium enhancement provides some protection against vacuum and radiation, Jake explained to the strike team he had assembled, but you will only have about 10 minutes before the exposure becomes fatal. Lisa was not happy about Jake leading the mission personally. "You are too valuable to risk on something this dangerous," she argued. "Let someone else lead the assault team." "No one else has the strength needed to break through their hull armor," Jake replied, "and no one else has enough experience with their technology to disable their systems quickly." The mission launched during a solar storm when the platform's sensors would be partially blinded. Jake and 12 other enhanced humans used captured Valthara shuttles to approach the station while pretending to be returning patrol craft. Lisa monitored the mission from the Mountain Command Center, feeling helpless as she listened to the radio communications. The strike team had managed to dock with the platform, and Jake was leading them through the station's corridors. "Heavy resistance on level 7, came Jake's voice over the radio. "But we are making progress toward the command center, the Valthara." Defenders were fighting desperately because they knew that losing the platform would be a catastrophic blow to their position on the planet. But they had never faced enhanced humans in the confined spaces of a space station, where superior strength and speed gave the attackers huge advantages. "Command center secured," Jake reported 20 minutes later. "Beginning system shutdown procedures." Lisa felt relief flooding through her as she heard those words. Without the orbital platform, the Valthara would lose their ability to coordinate their remaining forces and bring in supplies from off-world. But their celebration was interrupted by urgent reports from scouts watching the other platforms. The aliens were preparing to use their remaining orbital weapons to bombard human population centers in retaliation for the loss of the captured station. "They are targeting New Haven Colony and the eastern settlements," Marcus reported. "Estimated time to bombardment is 30 minutes. Lisa felt sick as she realized what the Valthara were planning. They were going to kill thousands of innocent humans to punish the resistance for their success. "Can we stop them?" she asked. Not from here, Marcus replied. The other platforms are too far away and too well defended. But Jake's voice came over the radio with a different answer. I can use this platform's weapons to target the other stations, he said, but I need to stay here to operate the systems manually. Lisa understood what that meant. The platform Jake had captured would be destroyed when the other stations returned fire. He would be sacrificing himself to save the human colonies. There has to be another way, she said into the radio. There is no time for another way, Jake replied. The bombardment begins in 20 minutes. Lisa made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. I am coming up there, she announced. Absolutely not, Jake said immediately. It is too dangerous and there is nothing you can do to help. Yes, there is, Lisa replied as she was already moving toward the shuttle bay. I can help you operate the weapon system so we can disable all the platforms faster. Before anyone could stop her, Lisa was in a shuttle and heading toward the captured orbital platform. She had never piloted a spacecraft before, but the Nexium enhancement seemed to give her an intuitive understanding of the controls. She reached the platform just as Jake was beginning his attack on the other stations. The weapons were incredibly powerful, but they required precise targeting to disable the enemy platforms without destroying them completely. You should not have come, Jake said when she arrived at the command center. Someone needs to watch your back, Lisa replied as she took position at one of the weapon control stations. Together, they targeted the remaining Valthera platforms with devastating accuracy. Jake's strength allowed him to operate systems that normally required multiple crew members, while Lisa's tactical intelligence helped them prioritize their targets for maximum effect. One by one, the alien platforms went dark as their weapon systems were destroyed and their power cores were disabled. The Valthara bombardment never came and thousands of human lives were saved. When the last platform was neutralized, Jake and Lisa looked at each other with exhaustion and relief. The war was not over, but the aliens had lost their greatest advantage. The Valthara are requesting terms for surrender, came a transmission from the surface. Jake and Lisa exchanged glances. After years of oppression, the aliens wanted to negotiate. What should we tell them? Lisa asked. Jake thought for a moment, then activated the communication system. Tell them that humans do not negotiate with slavers, he said. They can leave our planet voluntarily, or we will force them to leave. The message that Lisa broadcast from the communication array spread across Kepler 442b like wildfire. In every human colony, people heard her words and felt something they had not experienced in years. Hope. The impossible had happened. Humans had fought back against the Valthera and won. Jake stood over the defeated form of Commander Zephyros, holding the alien's own weapon in his hands. The commander was still alive but badly injured and no longer a threat. Around them, the sounds of battle were fading as the remaining Valthera guards retreated in confusion. The other colonies are responding, Lisa called out from the communication array. I am getting messages from settlements all across the planet. Jake walked over to look at the incoming transmissions. Humans who had been hiding in mountains and forests for years were coming out of their shelters. Work crews in the mining colonies were overpowering their guards. Even some of the orbital stations were reporting successful uprisings. It is working, Jake said with amazement in his voice. They are actually fighting back. But their celebration was interrupted by the sound of approaching aircraft. Valthera reinforcements were arriving from the regional command center, and they would be much better equipped than the local guards. We need to get everyone to safety. Jake said the real battle is just beginning. They gathered the rescued children and made their way back toward the mountains as the first Valthera gunships appeared in the sky. The aliens were using heavy weapons now, and buildings in the colony were being destroyed as they searched for the rebels. Lisa carried Danny, while Jake helped the other children navigate the rough terrain. The Nexium tea had given them strength, but they were still weak from months of poor nutrition and medical neglect. Where are we going? Danny asked his sister. To a place where we will be safe, Lisa replied, and where you can get the food and medicine you need to get better. They reached the mountain paths just as the Valthera gunships began targeting the communication array. The aliens were trying to cut off the rebel broadcasts, but it was too late. The message had already reached every corner of the planet. Back, in the cave system, Jake showed the rescued children the same wonders that had amazed Lisa. The Nexium crystals provided light and warmth, while the enhanced plants offered nutrition that was far superior to anything the Valthara had provided. "This is incredible," said one of the older children as he felt his strength returning after drinking.
Nexium tea. I feel better than I have in years.
Lisa watched Danny's color improve as the mountain plants worked their healing magic on his sick body. For the first time since their parents had died, she felt like her brother might actually survive and grow up healthy. Over the following days, more humans began arriving at the mountain hideout. Word had spread through the colony about Jake's rescue mission, and people were willing to risk the dangerous journey to reach freedom. Jake organized the newcomers into groups and taught them how to use the enhanced weapons and survive in the mountain environment. Lisa helped coordinate the groups and plan supply runs to rescue more humans from the colony below. "We cannot save everyone at once," Jake explained during one of their planning sessions. "But every person we rescue makes us stronger and gives the Valthara one less hostage to use against us." The aliens were struggling to understand what had happened to their carefully controlled human population. Their reports to the homeworld described impossible events. Humans with superhuman strength, destroying their equipment, and humans organizing coordinated attacks across multiple colonies. Lisa intercepted one of these reports during a raid on a Valthara communication post. "They are calling us an emerging threat species," she told Jake. "They think we have been hiding our true capabilities all along." Jake laughed at the irony. "In a way they are right," he said. "Humans have always had the potential to be dangerous." He looked out at the growing community of refugees in the cave system. "We just needed the right motivation and the right tools." The Nexium enhancement was spreading to more humans as Jake shared his knowledge of the mountain plants and minerals. Each person who underwent the enhancement became stronger and faster than normal humans, which made their rescue operations more effective. But the real change was in the spirit of the human survivors. Years of oppression had made them feel helpless and defeated, but Jake and Lisa had shown them that resistance was possible. The psychological chains that had bound them were breaking. "I never thought I would see humans fighting back," said an older woman named Betty, who had escaped from a mining colony. "I was starting to believe that we deserved what the Valthara did to us." "No one deserves to be enslaved," Lisa replied. "We just forgot that we had the power to say no." The Valthara response to the uprising was swift and brutal. They brought in military units from other star systems and began bombing suspected rebel hideouts. But the enhanced humans were proving to be much more resilient than expected. "Their weapons are not as effective against us as they should be," Jake observed after surviving a direct hit from an energy weapon. "The Nexium enhancement seems to provide some protection against their technology." Lisa studied the tactical reports from other colonies and noticed a pattern. "They are having trouble tracking us too," she said. "Our enhanced metabolism might be interfering with their scanning equipment." This gave the human resistance a significant advantage. The Valthara had built their control system around the assumption that humans were weak and predictable. Enhanced humans were neither of those things. As the rebellion spread, the aliens began making desperate attempts to regain control. They threatened to destroy entire colonies if the humans did not surrender, but this only made the resistance stronger. "Let them destroy the buildings," Jake said during a broadcast to all rebel groups. "We can build new ones." His voice carried across the planet, giving strength to fighters everywhere. "But they cannot destroy the human spirit." The tide was turning and everyone could feel it. The Valthara, who had seemed so powerful and invincible, were starting to show signs of fear. Some of their ships were leaving. The planet and their ground forces were retreating to heavily fortified positions. Lisa stood on the mountain peak looking down at New Haven Colony, which was now mostly under human control. The Valthara flag had been replaced with a simple banner that showed a mountain peak surrounded by stars. "What are you thinking about?" Jake asked as he joined her on the overlook. "I am thinking about how different everything is now," Lisa said. "A few weeks ago I was begging for bread, and now I am helping to lead a revolution." Jake nodded. "Sometimes the smallest act of courage can change everything," he said. "You refusing to let your brother die was the spark that lit this fire." In the distance, they could see more Valthara ships lifting off from the spaceport. The aliens were beginning to evacuate their civilian population, which meant they were preparing for a final military confrontation or complete withdrawal. "What happens next?" Lisa asked. "Now we prepare for the hardest part." Jake replied, "Winning is just the beginning." He gestured toward the growing human settlements in the mountains. We have to build a new society and make sure this never happens again. The night of 3 moons came once every month when all 3 of Kepler 442b's moons were in the sky at the same time. The combined light created strange shadows and made it difficult for the Valthara to see clearly. Their yellow eyes were not designed for the mixed lighting that the 3 moons created. Jake and Lisa made their final preparations in the cave as the sun set, and the first moon appeared in the sky. Lisa now wore clothes made from the same materials as Jake's outfit and carried one of his enhanced weapons. She had been drinking Nexium tea for several days and could feel the difference in her strength and speed. "Remember the plan," Jake said as he checked his equipment one more time. "We go in fast and quiet through the drainage tunnels on the south side of the colony." Lisa nodded and repeated the plan they had practiced. "First, we rescue Danny and the other sick children from the medical center," she said. "Then we destroy the food distribution center and steal supplies for the people we rescue." And finally, Jake continued, "We take control of the communication array and broadcast our message to the other colonies." The communication array was the most dangerous part of their mission because it was heavily guarded and located in the center of the colony. But it was also the most important because it would allow them to tell other humans that resistance was possible. They left the cave and made their way down the mountain through paths that only Jake knew. The terrain was rough and dangerous, but Jake moved through it like he had been born there. Lisa found that her enhanced strength and reflexes made it much easier to keep up with him than it would have been before. As they got closer to the colony, they could see the lights from the Valthara guard towers and the glow from the buildings where humans lived. Lisa thought about Danny alone and sick in their small shelter and felt anger building inside her chest. "The Valthara will pay for what they have done," she said quietly. Jake looked at her and saw the determination in her eyes. "Good," he said. "You will need that anger for what comes next." They reached the drainage tunnels just as the second moon appeared in the sky. The tunnels were used to carry away rainwater during the wet season and were barely large enough for a person to crawl through. Jake had discovered them months ago during his reconnaissance of the colony. The tunnels led directly under the medical center where sick humans were kept. It was not really a hospital because the Valthara did not care much about human health. It was more like a warehouse where humans who could not work were stored until they either got better or died. Jake used his enhanced strength to lift the heavy metal grate that covered the tunnel entrance. They crawled through the narrow space for what felt like hours until they reached another grate, directly under the medical center. Lisa could hear voices above them, including the weak coughing of sick humans. Somewhere up there, Danny was waiting and she was finally going to be able to help him. Jake carefully removed the second grate, and they climbed up into a storage room in the basement of the medical center. The room was full of medical supplies, but most of them were marked for Valthara use only. The supplies meant for humans were of much lower quality. They crept up the stairs to the main floor of the building. There were 2 Valthara guards on duty, but they were not paying much attention because they thought no human would be foolish enough to attack a guarded facility. Jake moved like a shadow across the room and struck both guards before they could raise an alarm. His enhanced strength meant that a single blow from his fist was enough to knock out a Valthara warrior. Lisa was amazed at how quiet and efficient he was. They found Danny in a room with 6 other sick children. He was even thinner than when Lisa had last seen him, and his breathing was shallow and weak. But his eyes lit up when he saw his sister. "Lisa," he whispered, "I knew you would come back." Lisa hugged her brother gently and felt tears running down her cheeks. "I am sorry I was gone so long," she said. "But we are going to get you out of here." Jake was already examining the other children and determining which ones were strong enough to be moved immediately. 3 of them, including Danny, could walk with help. The other 3 would need to be carried. "We take them all," Jake said when he saw Lisa looking at the sickest children. "No one gets left behind." They gave the children small amounts of Nexium tea to help them regain some strength. Lisa was amazed at how quickly it worked. Even the sickest children were able to stand up and walk short distances after drinking the tea. The next part of the plan was to destroy the food distribution center. This would disrupt the Valthara control system and also provide supplies for the people they were rescuing. They made their way through the dark streets of the colony. with Jake carrying the weakest children and Lisa helping Danny and the others walk. The third moon was now rising, and the strange lighting made it easy to hide in the shadows. The food distribution center was a large building surrounded by a fence and guarded by 4 Velthara warriors. Jake and Lisa approached from different directions and attacked simultaneously. Lisa had never fought anyone before, but the Nexium enhancement made her faster and stronger than she had ever imagined possible. Her weapon fired bolts of blue energy that punched through Velthara armor like it was made of paper. Jake was even more devastating. He moved through the guards like a force of nature, ripping apart their weapons and armor with his bare hands. The Velthara had never faced a human with enhanced abilities, and they had no idea how to fight someone like Jake. Within minutes, all 4 guards were defeated, and Jake was setting charges to destroy the building. The explosions would alert every guard in the colony, but by then they would already be at the communication array. "Time to send our message," Jake said as the first explosion lit up the night sky behind them. The communication array was located on top of the tallest building in the colony. It was surrounded by guards and protected by energy shields, but Jake had studied its defenses for months. They fought their way through the streets as alarms blared and Velthara reinforcements arrived from all directions. Lisa discovered that she was a natural fighter, and her smaller size allowed her to move through the battle in ways that confused their enemies. Jake cleared a path to the building, and they fought their way up the stairs to the roof. The final battle was with Commander Zephyros himself, who had come to stop them personally. "Impossible," Zephyros said when he saw Jake. "Humans cannot become this strong. You never understood what humans are capable of," Jake replied as he charged at the alien commander. The fight between Jake and Zephyros was fierce and brutal. The commander was a skilled warrior with advanced weapons and armor, but Jake's enhanced abilities gave him the advantage he needed. While Jake fought Zephyros, Lisa reached the communication array and began broadcasting their message to every human colony on the planet. Her voice carried across the airwaves, bringing hope to millions of oppressed humans. "This is Lisa Carter broadcasting from New Haven Colony," she said. "We want all humans to know that resistance is possible." She looked at Jake as he defeated the alien commander. "We are not the weak prey that the Velthara think we are." Her voice grew stronger. "We are human, and we will not surrender." Lisa woke up slowly, like she was swimming up from the bottom of a deep lake. The first thing she noticed was that she was warm and comfortable for the first time in days. The second thing she noticed was that she was lying on something soft that felt like real fabric instead of the rough materials humans usually had to use. She opened her eyes and found herself in a cave, but not like any cave she had ever seen. The walls were smooth and covered with strange blue crystals that gave off a gentle light. The air smelled clean and fresh, and she could hear the sound of running water somewhere nearby. "You are awake," said the deep voice she remembered from the night before. Lisa turned her head and saw Jake Sullivan sitting on a large stone near the cave entrance. In the crystal light, she could see him more clearly than before. His clothes were definitely made from animal skins, but they were well crafted and looked warm and durable. His boots appeared to be made from some kind of metallic material that she did not recognize. "Where am I?" Lisa asked, and was surprised that her voice sounded almost normal. "About 15 miles up in the Keth Mountains," Jake replied. "This is my home." Lisa tried to sit up and realized that someone had cleaned and bandaged the whip wounds on her back. She was wearing a clean shirt made from the same soft fabric as the blanket that had been covering her. "You treated my injuries," she said. Jake nodded. "I have had practice with that kind of thing," he said. "The Velthara like to use whips on humans who disobey them." Lisa looked around the cave and saw that it was much larger than it had seemed at first. There were several rooms connected by natural passages, and she could see supplies and equipment stored in organized piles. There were weapons that looked like they were made from both human and alien technology mixed together. "How long have you been living up here?" Lisa asked. "About 8 years," Jake said. "Ever since they killed my sister during the first raids." Jake stood up and walked to a small fire that was burning in a circle of stones. He picked up a metal cup and filled it with something from a pot that was hanging over the flames. "Drink this," he said as he handed the cup to Lisa. "It will help you get your strength back." The liquid was warm and tasted like herbs and honey. Lisa felt strength flowing back into her body with each sip. Whatever Jake had given her was working much faster than normal food or medicine. "What is this?" she asked. "Tea made from plants that grow higher up in the mountains." Jake explained. "They have special properties that help humans heal and grow stronger." Lisa finished the tea and felt more alert than she had in weeks. Even the pain from her back wounds was fading to a dull ache. "I have to go back," she said suddenly. "My brother Danny is sick and he needs food." Jake's expression became sad. "I know about your brother," he said. "I have been watching the colony for months and I know about all the humans who are suffering down there." "Then you know I have to help him," Lisa said as she tried to stand up. Jake gently pushed her back down. "Going back now would be suicide," he said. "The Valthara have doubled their guard patrols and they are specifically looking for you." Lisa felt tears starting in her eyes. "Then Danny will die," she said. "I failed him." "Maybe not." Jake said, "I have been planning something for a long time and your situation might be the catalyst. He walked over to one of the equipment piles and pulled out a large map. He spread it on the ground between them and Lisa could see that it showed the entire New Haven colony in great detail. "I have been mapping every building, every guard post, and every patrol route for years," Jake explained. "I know where they keep their weapons, where they store their food, and where their weak points are." Lisa looked at the map and saw dozens of marks and notes written in Jake's handwriting. It was clear that he had been studying the colony very carefully. "What are you planning?" she asked. "A rescue mission that will also be the start of something much bigger." Jake said, "I am going to get your brother and as many other humans as possible out of that colony." Lisa stared at him. "That is impossible," she said. "There are hundreds of Valthara guards down there." Jake smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "The Valthara think they know everything about humans," he said, "but they have never met a human like me." He picked up one of the strange weapons from his equipment pile. It looked like a rifle, but it was made from materials Lisa had never seen before. Parts of it seemed to be carved from the same blue crystals that lit the cave. "These mountains are full of a mineral called nexium," Jake explained. "It has interesting effects on human physiology when consumed in the right amounts." "What kind of effects?" Lisa asked. Instead of answering, Jake picked up a large rock that must have weighed at least 50 pounds. He held it in one hand and squeezed. The rock crumbled to dust between his fingers. Lisa's eyes went wide. How is that possible? 8 years of eating nexium-enhanced plants and breathing nexium dust. Jake said, "My muscles are about 10 times stronger than a normal human and my reflexes are much faster." He set down the weapon and looked directly at Lisa. "But strength alone will not be enough," he said. "I need someone who knows the colony from the inside and who has motivation to see the mission succeed." Lisa understood what he was asking. "You want me to help you?" "I want you to help me save your brother and start a revolution that will free every human on this planet," Jake said. "But first, you need to get stronger." Over the next few days, Jake taught Lisa about life in the mountains and about the special properties of nexium. He showed her plants that could heal injuries in hours instead of days and fruits that could give a person energy for an entire day. He also showed her how to fight with the enhanced weapons he had created. The weapons were unlike anything the Valthara used. They fired bolts of energy that could punch through alien armor and were powered by nexium crystals. Jake had been building an arsenal for years in preparation for the day when he would strike back at the aliens who had destroyed his world. Lisa learned quickly, and Jake was impressed by her intelligence and determination. She had a natural talent for tactics and strategy that complemented his raw strength and fighting ability. "Your brother is not the only sick human in that colony," Jake said on the third day. "There are dozens of children who are dying because the Valthara do not provide enough food or medicine." Lisa nodded because she had seen the suffering every day before her arrest. "I know," she said, "but what can we do about it?" "We can show them that humans do not have to accept this treatment," Jake said. "We can prove that we are not the weak prey animals the Valthara think we are." He pulled out another map that showed the entire planet. "There are 12 human colonies on this world," he said. If we can inspire them to fight back, then we can drive the Velthara off our planet entirely. Lisa looked at the scope of what Jake was proposing and felt both excited and terrified. When do we start? She asked. Jake smiled. Tomorrow night, he said, during the night of 3 moons when the Velthara vision is impaired. The first night in the exposure cage was the longest of Lisa's life. The metal box trapped the heat from the twin suns during the day and then became freezing cold when the sun set. Her back burned from the whip marks and every movement sent waves of pain through her body. She could not lie down properly because the cage was too small, so she had to sit hunched over with her knees pulled up to her chest. Through the metal bars she could see other humans walking past on their way to work or to get their daily rations. Most of them looked away when they saw her because they were afraid that showing sympathy would get them in trouble too. A few brave souls would glance at her quickly and Lisa could see the sadness in their eyes. On the second day, the pain from her wounds was joined by terrible thirst and hunger. The Velthara guards gave prisoners in the exposure cages no food or water. Lisa's lips cracked and her tongue felt thick and dry in her mouth. She tried to catch some moisture from the air when the morning dew formed on the metal bars, but it was never enough. The worst part was thinking about Danny alone in their shelter. He would be wondering why she had not come home. He would be getting weaker and sicker without food, and there was nothing she could do to help him. Lisa had tried to save her brother, but instead she had doomed them both. Late on the second day, Lisa heard strange sounds coming from the direction of the Keth Mountains. The mountains rose up like giant teeth along the horizon and were covered in thick forests and dangerous wildlife. Most humans stayed far away from the mountains because the Velthara had warned them that terrible creatures lived there. The sounds Lisa heard were not like any animal she knew. There were deep booming noises like explosions and high-pitched screams that sounded almost like Velthara voices, but full of fear and pain. The guards at the punishment square stopped their patrols and looked nervously toward the mountains. What was that, one guard asked another in their alien language. Probably just mining operations. The second guard replied, but he did not sound convinced. The strange sounds continued through the night and into the third day. Lisa noticed that more Velthara guards were arriving at the colony, and they all seemed worried about something. They spoke in hushed voices and kept checking their weapons. Lisa was starting to fade in and out of consciousness from the heat and lack of water when she heard one of the guards mention something that caught her attention. He was talking about the ghost in these peaks and how 3 patrol groups had gone into the mountains and never returned. Commander Zephyros thinks it might be a surviving human, the guard said, but humans cannot survive in the mountains for more than a few days. Then what is killing our patrols? Asked the other guard. Maybe the stories about the mountains are true. The first guard said quietly, maybe there really are monsters up there. Lisa tried to focus on what they were saying, but her mind was becoming cloudy from dehydration. She had heard stories about the mountains too, but they were just tales that humans told to scare children. There were supposed to be creatures up there that could tear apart metal with their bare hands, and humans who had become something more than human after eating the strange plants that grew in the high places. As the third night fell, Lisa was barely alive. Her body had stopped producing sweat and her vision was becoming blurry. She knew that she would probably not survive another day in the cage. Part of her was almost relieved because at least the suffering would end. That was when she heard footsteps approaching the cage. At first she thought it was another guard coming to check on her, but the footsteps were different. They were too heavy and too quiet at the same time. Lisa tried to look up, but her neck was too weak to lift her head properly. A shadow fell across the cage and Lisa smelled something strange. It was not the metallic smell of Velthara or the dust and sweat smell of humans. It was like pine trees and wild animals and something else she could not identify. Easy there, said a deep voice in perfect human speech. I am going to get you out. Lisa managed to raise her head slightly and saw the biggest human she had ever seen. He was at least 7 feet tall with broad shoulders and arms like tree trunks. His hair and beard were long and wild, and his clothes looked like they were made from animal skins. Most shocking of all, he was holding the door of the cage in his hands after apparently ripping it clean off its hinges. Who are you? Lisa whispered through cracked lips. Name is Jake Sullivan, the big man said as he carefully lifted Lisa out of the cage. But most folks around here think I am just a story. Lisa tried to speak again, but no words came out. Jake noticed how weak she was and pulled a water container from his belt. He held it to her lips and let her drink slowly. Not too much at first, he said gently. Your body needs time to remember how to process water. In the distance, Lisa could hear Valthara alarms starting to sound. Someone had discovered that the cage was empty, and that a prisoner was missing. Jake heard the alarms too, and his expression became serious. We need to move, he said as he lifted Lisa in his arms like she weighed nothing. The mountains are not far, but we have to get there before they organize a search. Lisa wanted to tell him about Danny, but she was too weak to form the words. Jake seemed to understand anyway. I know about your brother, he said as he started running toward the mountains with Lisa in his arms. I have been watching the colony for weeks, and I saw what happened to you. His voice became angry. I saw what they did. Lisa felt herself drifting in and out of consciousness as Jake carried her away from New Haven Colony. The last thing she saw before everything went black was the dark outline of the mountains growing larger and larger until they blocked out the stars. Lisa Carter walked through the dusty streets of New Haven Colony with her head down and her stomach empty. The twin suns of Kepler 442b beat down on her thin shoulders as she made her way toward the food distribution center. Her bare feet kicked up small clouds of red dirt with each step. She had not eaten in 2 days, and her younger brother Danny had not eaten in 3. The Valthara guards stood tall and imposing outside the metal building where humans came to receive their daily bread rations. Their purple skin gleamed in the sunlight, and their forearms moved with practiced efficiency as they checked identification cards and counted out small portions of gray bread. Lisa had already received her ration for the day, but it had gone straight to Danny, who lay sick and weak in their small shelter. She stood at the edge of the crowd and watched other humans shuffle forward in line. Most kept their eyes down and said nothing. Speaking to the Valthara without permission was forbidden. Looking them directly in the eyes was forbidden. Asking for extra food was punishable by death or worse. Lisa thought about Danny waiting for her back in their tiny home, made from scrap metal and old fabric. He was only 12 years old and had been sick for weeks. The medicine the Valthara provided was not enough, and the food rations barely kept one person alive, let alone 2. She had given him all her food, but he was still getting weaker every day. The line moved forward slowly, and Lisa found herself walking closer to the distribution window. Her heart beat fast in her chest, and her hands shook with fear and hunger. She knew what she was about to do was dangerous, but she could not watch her brother die. When she reached the front of the line, the Valthara guard looked down at her with cold yellow eyes. His name was Kex, and he had been working at the distribution center for months. He knew every human face and remembered who had already received their rations. You already came today, human, Kex said in his harsh alien voice. Why do you return? Lisa swallowed hard and forced herself to speak. Please, sir. My brother is very sick and needs more food, she said quietly. I gave him my ration, but it is not enough. The other humans in line stepped back when they heard her words. Everyone knew that begging for extra food was against the law. Kex stood up to his full height, which was nearly 8 feet tall, and all 4 of his arms moved to the weapons at his belt. You dare ask for more than your allotment? He said loudly, so all the humans could hear. You think the Empire owes you something beyond what we graciously provide? Lisa felt tears starting in her eyes, but she did not back down. My brother will die without more food, she said. Please have mercy. Kex laughed, which sounded like metal scraping against stone. Mercy is for the strong, he said. Weak humans who cannot survive on proper rations do not deserve to live. He pressed a button on his communication device, and within seconds more Valthara guards arrived. They surrounded Lisa and grabbed her arms with their powerful hands. The other humans in line watched in horror, but none dared to speak up or help her. Commander Zephyros arrived a few minutes later. He was the highest-ranking Valthara officer in New Haven Colony, and his presence meant that Lisa was in serious trouble. His purple skin was darker than the other guards, and he wore the black armor that marked him as a member of the warrior caste. What is the disturbance? Zephyros demanded. This human begged for extra food, Kex reported. She claims her offspring is sick and needs more nutrition. Zephyros walked slowly around Lisa, looking at her from all angles like she was an interesting specimen. Do you know the penalty for begging human? He asked. Lisa nodded because everyone knew the punishment for breaking. The food laws. Yes, sir, she whispered. Tell me what it is. Zephyros commanded. Public flogging, and 3 days in the exposure cages. Lisa said. Zephyros smiled, which showed his sharp teeth. That is correct, he said. And do you know why we have these laws? Lisa shook her head because she had never thought about the reasons behind the Valthera rules. No, sir, she said. We have these laws because humans are naturally greedy and selfish, Zephyros explained. If we allowed one human to beg for extra food, then all humans would beg, and our careful distribution system would collapse. He walked closer to Lisa until his face was only inches from hers. Your species thinks only of yourselves and never considers the greater good. Lisa wanted to argue that she was thinking of her sick brother and not herself, but she knew that speaking back to a Valthara commander would only make her punishment worse. Take her to the punishment square, Zephyros ordered. Let all humans see what happens to those who think they deserve special treatment. The guards dragged Lisa through the streets as other humans watched from doorways and windows. News of her arrest spread quickly through the colony, and by the time they reached the punishment square, a large crowd had gathered. Lisa saw fear in their faces because they all knew that any one of them could be next. The flogging post stood in the center of the square. It was made from dark metal and had restraints where Lisa's arms and legs would be secured. The Valthara guard stripped off her shirt and tied her hands above her head. Her back was exposed to the crowd and to the whip that would soon tear her skin. Zephyros stood before the crowd and raised his voice so everyone could hear. This human chose to beg for extra food instead of accepting what the Empire provides, he announced. She put her own desires above the rules that keep our society stable. He gestured toward Lisa. Let this be a lesson to all humans about the consequences of greed. The first lash of the energy whip felt like fire across Lisa's back. The second lash crossed the first, and the pain was so intense that she screamed despite trying to stay quiet. By the 10th lash, she could barely remain conscious and blood was running down her back. When the flogging was finished, the guards carried Lisa to the exposure cages at the edge of the square. The cages were metal boxes barely large enough for a person to sit up inside. They had no shade and no water, and were designed to slowly kill whoever was placed inside them. As the guards locked Lisa inside the cage, she could see her small shelter. In the distance, where Danny was waiting for her to return with food that would never come,